Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Right, something has happened which I think could be highly significant, and it refers to the skeptics yet again. And as some of you might have seen my video, Sally Morgan, Skeptic Fail, there'll be a link in the description box to that. But basically, we could be at a point now where we're going to see another major upheaval in the world of the skeptic movement. Now, I've been saying several times now for a while that we're seeing unprecedented change in the skeptic movement at the moment. There's a lot of they've blown it quite a bit, as I've been keen to point out, but also there's a lot of conflict, actually, internal division within the skeptic movement, a lot of bad feeling, a lot of backbiting, internal turf wars and things like that, concerning people like I was talking about in the Sally Morgan film, Rebecca Watson, and about her ordeal. And also there's this thing called Atheism Plus and all the controversy surrounding that. There's a whole load of other similar issues that have come, which seem to be causing a lot of there's fuss about how closely skepticism should be linked to atheism, the role of women in skepticism and their rights and obligations and things like this. This has caused some bad feeling, a lot of bad feeling in fact, and there's been some real nastiness. There have also been scandals involving people like the aforementioned Sally Morgan, also Meryl Dorey. It seems like there is a thug element, which I'm going to talk about more in a minute, but what's happened now could really be at least as significant as those. Now, as you're well aware, I consider the skeptic movement to be an ideology. I've explained before. The skeptics, if you talk to a skeptic about what they believe, they will say things like, well, I believe in evidence and reason and science, and I mean, I'm interested in the supernatural and paranormal, but I won't accept it as true unless there's real evidence that it exists. Now that's, as I said before, is not actually that's not actually a description, it is a slogan. And I explained why in other videos, but basically then it's the skeptic movement is actually it's more kind of, well, look in the links in the description box for more details, but it's an ideology. It's an ideology that says things like the supernatural, the paranormal, conspiracy theories and similar subjects are not true. It's a worldview in which those things are not true and they have to be promoted as untrue. Now, so in a sense, it's rather, I compare it to a religion in a way. It has similarities to organised religion, although, of course, the skeptics would vehemently deny that. I mean, Richard Dawkins would go, oh, no, absolutely not. It is not religious, it's evidence. Doctor, help me, my magisteria are overlapping. And he'd say similar things like that. But I think it is. And I think skepticism may not be a religion. In a sense, it's an anti-religion, but it has similarities in mindset to religion. Skeptics can behave as religious zealots do, and what's more, they can behave that way to when you get the situation where a religious zealot lapses, because they do. People who can be all their lives Christians and they'll suddenly snap out of it. I mean, people like Seth Andrew, who does the Thinking Atheist. He used to be a Bible bashing Christian. Now, in the same way that religious people can convert, they can lose their faith, so can skeptics. It does happen. There are some people, a minority of people, who get involved in the skeptic movement and eventually drop out of it for various reasons. And it could be through personal issues with other skeptics. I know a guy, I've got a guy I know he was a friend of mine, but he's blocked me now. I don't know. But he had a sort of personal issue with the skeptic movement, which meant he kind of stopped going to skeptic meetings and things like that. But there's a number of people who do, for reasons on principle. They will actually leave the skeptic movement because they decide that the skeptic movement is wrong, that the paradigm of the skeptic movement doesn't reflect the world we live in. It doesn't reflect the people that we are. And if you Google ex-skeptic, you'll get a lot of videos, reports and blog articles about people who describe this happening to them. Now, when this happens, hopefully those people will be treated respectfully by their former fellow skeptics. But I can see situations, in fact I know situations have happened when that's not the case, and that the skeptics who don't go with them, their skeptic companions, feel betrayed, and they will, and the skeptic convert, the defector, will experience hostility and recriminations from that. And I'm just thinking though, what if the convert, this never happened before, but it could happen now. What if the convert was not just any old skeptic, but was one of the skeptic movement's principal spokesmen? I'm talking about Michael Shermer. I am indeed. And now I only heard about this. I mean, this is new information on me. This concerns something that happened over a month ago, but it's just come to me. It came to me from Steve Trueblue, who I always like to keep an eye on. I found it up here on this this video of his. Pseudo-skeptics, Michael Shermer, reborn via personal experience. There'll be a link to this video in the description box about this whole situation. But it's extremely interesting. But I'll tell you a little bit of background. I'll tell you a bit about background to Michael Shermer first of all. Now, Michael Shermer was, as I said, he's one of the world's best-known skeptics. But he became interested in the paranormal in a similar way to Susan Blackmore. He had a mystical experience. Susan Blackmore, of course, became a believer, spelt B-U-H-L-E-V-A, when she had a mystical experience involving a drug trip. She was a believer for a long time, and then she became a skeptic after many, many years. Shermer became a skeptic quite close. It took much less time for Shermer to see his experience through the skeptical eye. But the experience he had was actually, he was riding through Colorado in the western United States in a remote area. He was riding a bike. He was a cycle racer. He used to take part in these very long endurance bicycle races. And due to he was extremely tired, he was extremely drowsy, suffering from lack of sleep, and suffering from physical strain, that it induced an altered state of consciousness in him. And he describes this about what happened to him in his books. And this experience led him directly into the study of anomalous psychology, or as Professor Chris French calls it, anomalous psychology. There's no evidence. And in 1992, Shermer founded the Skeptic Society. This is an international organisation which has over 55,000 members across the world. And of course, it publishes the Skeptic magazine every quarter. It's a major international skeptic magazine. I've read it myself. And it features columns with people like Richard Dawkins, James Randi, many of these other super skeptics, these heroes of skepticism. Shermer, he's a very practical man. He's an organiser. He's organised conferences. He's organised outings and activism events. The outings includes the Skeptic Camp, which is like a summer camp it's an American thing, summer camps, where you send your kid off to this place in the forests and stuff like that. Well, he's organised a Skeptic Camp for parents who want to send their children off to camps where you learn about skepticism. And he's written 17 books, and they include Why People Believe Weird Things, The Skeptic Encyclopedia of Pseudoscience, and The Believing Brain. And if you watch any skeptic conference, the videos of skeptic conferences, or you go along to one of them, I've seen him live on stage actually. He's one of the most sought after people. He's always there. He's the Nick Pope. He's like Nick Pope in UFO conferences. You always have Michael Shermer among the guys speaking. And also on TV, he's when people produce a TV program and you have to about the supernatural or paranormal or UFOs or something or ghosts, and you have to get a skeptic in to balance it. Who do they invite? They're called Michael Shermer. He's often on there. He often appears in films too. In fact, a friend of mine, Paul Davids, produced a film called The Life After Death Project, where he wanted to get a skeptic spin on the thing. So who did he invite to take part in the film? Michael Shermer. He's the ultimate pundit, and as I said on Skeptic Matters, he's a big part of his life. He's the last person in the world, I thought, or one of the last people anyway, who would question the House of Skeptic, but it appears that he has, if I'm correct. Now, a few weeks ago, Michael Shermer, he posted this article on his website, which was actually originally put in the Scientific American magazine, and it is subtitled, "I witnessed an event so mysterious that it shook my skepticism." Now, Steve Trueblue in his video, if you go to that video, he's reproduced the entire article. I won't do that, but I'll just give you a brief précis of it. What happened was on June the 25th, he got married to a woman called Jennifer Graf, who, this is a lady from Germany. She comes from Cologne in Germany. She'd been raised by her mother and grandfather. Her father died when she was young, and she had to move across the United States and bring all her belongings with her. And during the process, some of her belongings got lost. And this has happened to me, because I've moved house about 3 times in the last 6 years or so, and I keep losing stuff. I've lost my pinhole readers. You know, I've lost my copy of Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea's The Illuminatus trilogy, which is my favourite book. I have to get another one. Now, a lot of sadly, some of the things that Jennifer lost were her grandfather's belongings. Her grandfather died some years before, and these were lost. And she was very, very sad, obviously. So one thing did survive, though. One thing did make it, and that was an old portable radio that her grandfather used to listen to. And that arrived safely. So to cheer her up, Shermer decided to try and get it working again. So he opened it up, he fiddled with the innards, he put new batteries in it, which it's since 1978 this thing was built, so it's pretty old. It's it's 36 years old, this radio. Now, very few electronic gear works after 5 years. But he tried to fix it and he couldn't get it working again. But he didn't want to throw it away because it had a lot of sentimental value for Jennifer. So he put it in the back of the drawer in his desk in his study, and he kept it there. Because she was his fiancée, after all. He didn't want to piss her off. Anyway, 3 months later, they got married. And they had a lovely ceremony. Yeah, they got to... They had a wedding ceremony at the registry office. Then they went home and they had a little ceremony at the house with all their friends around, where they exchanged rings and everything, you know, because they're not religious. They didn't have a vicar or anything. And suddenly, they were in the middle of this ceremony and they heard music playing. And everyone was giving it, oh, what's going on? I mean, check their pockets, check their iPhones. Oh, mine's switched off, it must be you. Oh, my laptop, what about my laptop? Is it? No, it's switched off. All the people had politely switched off their communications gear, so there was nothing like that going on. And then suddenly they realised the music was coming from Shermer's study. This is interesting because Shermer's daughter had actually said earlier on that there was no sound coming from that room, but that some music had started playing just before the ceremony. Anyway, so what happened was they went into the study, they checked the computer, that was switched off, and then suddenly Jennifer opened up the drawer and she pulled out the little transistor radio, this little portable radio that Shermer had tried to fix that used to belong to her granddad. Music, a love song was coming out of that radio. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? I mean, not just any, it wasn't just the sports results or anything like that. It wasn't the cricket scores or the baseball scores, because it's America. It was this particular song. It was really remarkable. This is a radio that hadn't worked for 36 years. And Shermer had fiddled with 3 months ago. It's really quite remarkable. And, well, the radio carried on working for the whole day. Though, interestingly, the following morning it stopped. Short, never to go again. It didn't work. It hasn't worked since. Now, it's really, really amazing because both Shermer and his new wife are skeptics. I mean, she's as skeptical as he is, and quite frankly, how else could she put up with him? But this really shook them both. I mean, she was quite tearful, and she really felt that her grandfather, who died, was there. Felt he was there with her in the ceremony, because she'd been in the middle of the ceremony. She was a long way from home. She hardly left Germany. She was suddenly in a foreign country, thousands of miles from home. Her granddad was dead, and she'd longed to have her granddad give her away at her wedding, and she really felt that her granddad was there. Now, Shermer says, you know, that if he'd heard this from someone else, he wouldn't have believed it, and quite frankly, he has heard it from other people, and he hasn't believed it. It seems very different. He seems very different now. He's experiencing it for himself. Now, he more than anybody else knows the implications of what he's talking about. He really does. He's questioning a rational explanation for this event, this anomalous psychological event. Now, and he understands that, you know, electronic equipment can, as I said, it can spontaneously break down. It can spontaneously recover. Anybody who uses Windows 8 will know that. I use Windows 7 Professional. God, I'm nowhere. I'm having 8. And there's also the law of large numbers, because a lot of people, every day in the world, millions of people get married, millions of them have radios. Sooner or later, something like that is going to happen. It's simply because of there's so many different permutations that something significant will happen. It's bound to. But he does say, I mean, Shermer says this. I can't do his voice, and I'm not going to try and do his voice. I can impersonate Richard Dawkins, but not Michael Shermer. The eerie conjunction of these deeply evocative events gave her, that's Jennifer, the distinct feeling that her grandfather was there and that the music was his gift of approval. I have to admit, it rocked me back on my heels and shook my scepticism to its core as well. Now, Shermer does concede in the article that the intense emotion of the event, it was his wedding day after all, it influenced him and Jennifer's judgment. But at the end of the article he says this, and this is an extraordinary thing for a skeptic to say. The emotional interpretations of such anomalous events grant them significance regardless of their casual account. And if we are to take seriously the scientific credo to keep an open mind and remain agnostic when the evidence is indecisive or the riddle unsolved, we should not shut the doors of perception when they may be open to us to marvel in the mysterious. Is it just my imagination, or is Michael Shermer recalling all the numerous occasions he heard about events exactly like the one he's experienced, but he dismissed? These anecdotes that cannot be used for scientific evidence. The plural of anecdote is not data. And all these other sayings that the skeptics have. He dismissed those, right? But is he now reconsidering what he heard because of something like that happened to him? Is Michael Shermer reconsidering being a skeptic? Well, this article was published a long time ago, in fact over a month, like I said. And I pay close attention to the skeptic media. I listen to skeptic radio shows. I read skeptic things like articles and websites and things like that. Now they've been completely silent over the matter, and that's not unexpected. They do tend to be. They're like political parties. They like to have a shop window that's just free from anything incriminating or controversial. They've never said much about Sally Morgan. In fact, what's his name? Robbins. What's his name? Robbins was the only guy to comment on Sally Morgan. And there's this incident where this guy sued James Randi. They never said a word about that either. Now, Shermer didn't make any comment for a while. Apparently, he's posted on Facebook, my Siam column is not a hoax or an endorsement of the paranormal. It's just an anomalous experience. It's okay to enjoy the mystery. Now, I've not seen any confirmation that Shermer actually said that, but if it is, it's the only comment he's made about this now. And there's a post on the JREF forum on the James Randi. That is the James Randi Educational Foundation. It's forum, but apparently it's changed its name now. It's known as the International Skeptics Forum. I don't know why. For some reason, it's no longer affiliated with the JREF, which is very, very strange. Now, if you have a look at it, I'll show you. I'll show you it actually. Where is it? Here we go. Right. Now, what you see happens here is that turn that around. I don't know if you can find it. This guy, it started by this guy, Lucas, 1986, and he just said, "Oh, is Michael Shermer becoming a believer?" Double question mark. And then they basically go through. A lot of them just go through the other members. They just go through the evidence of the article, and then they sort of basically make the same points that Shermer does. And Skeptic Ginger says here, I had a radio that came on all by itself. Shermer, of all people, should know that it was just a coincidence and an electronic anomaly that was inexplicable based on some part connecting and then came loose again. And more carries on. There's several other people who posted comments saying that they made this point. Shermer tinkered with it. It was in the drawer 3 months. And perhaps it happened when no one was in the house to hear it. So it's this law of large numbers, coincidence again. It goes on like this. I think it's lame, said Lucas. Shermer's judgments are clouded by emotions. Yeah, okay. And there's more and more of this sort of thing. Let me go down a bit. There's what mystery? I don't even see a mystery, yes. The mystery is why a skeptic would think that it's a mystery. I expect soon he will see his frozen waterfall. Well, frozen waterfall. I don't think that's some kind of skeptic saying. I don't know. It's probably some saying that he's going to. Now, this is particularly interesting from Reno. He says that his future life with his wife might be more problematic, as she seems to be fully convinced that her dead grandfather communicated with her. Her husband went along with it at a time, so she'll feel a bit betrayed later. And this is going to come back and bite him in the rear. Well, actually, it sounds like Jennifer and Michael were very, very similar in their outlook to this. Jennifer's a skeptic too, I think. Someone here says they saw a UFO. Blimey, but they're still. So it goes. So they a lot of these people do have these experiences and they rationalise them away. Like Wallerab here talks about having a UFO. Talking about where is it? Stupid. Where do we go? Ooh, where are we? There's a bit more. Carries on down here. Where are we? Let's see more interesting stuff. Wow, a skeptic admits weird stuff happens. Shame the woo man's Meisters are trying to make that mean that all skeptics are wrong. Now, there's only one guy actually says, there's only one guy here, Lucas, the opening poster, who actually says what I think is the principal point here. The only question will remain, what happens with the Skeptic magazine? Will it become a woo magazine now, or will Shermer explain what he's talking about? Woo magazine being a derogatory word for people like me. Now, again, it comes down to Porterboy. Now, Porterboy featured in my video about Sally Morgan. He's probably the most intelligent person on the JREF forum. He's the voice of reason, he's the voice of free speech, and he pulls the skeptic Nazis and skeptocrats into line whenever they try to stretch their muscles too much. Flex their muscles, rather. We must not give them the satisfaction of appearing to reject Shermer's statement a priori. Let's humour him and come across as open-minded. We can say, hey, well, fancy that, Mike. That is amazing. We're right behind you and trying to explain it. I don't think Shermer would say something like this lightly. He must understand the implications of what he said. We can't just act like he's Uri Geller all of a sudden. Good old Porterboy. Oh. Oh, actually, yeah, Porterboy, of all the members, like I said, of all the members on the JREF forum, Porterboy is definitely my favourite. Porterboy. He sounds somehow familiar to me. Does he sound familiar to you? So, anyway, we continue. Yes, this is very interesting. So, as I said, they're trying to basically, a lot of it's just discrediting. They talk about coincidence. Well, I've said before, the whole concept of coincidence itself contains a logical fallacy if you use it in these circumstances, because there's no cut-off point. There's no cut-off point between, for instance, if you're going to say, oh, it's a coincidence whenever something strange happens, the response to that is, well, when would something happen you would not consider a coincidence? Because they'll say something like an EVP message, electronic voice phenomenon, sounds like someone speaking to you, and they'll say, oh no, that's just random noise. And you interpret it, your brain interpreted it through apophenia, this function your brain has, into a voice. It's just coincidentally sounded like a voice. And I said, well, I say to them, well, switch on the radio. So they switch the radio on. There's, imagine there's the Archers playing or something. You know, Tales of the Folk from Ambry. And I says, how do you know that's not random noise? And they'll reply something like, well, of course it's not random noise. Isn't it obvious? That's a radio show. That's the Archers. And I say, so where's the cut-off point between the two? That sounds like a voice. What I played you on the EVP sounds like a voice. How do you know? Where's the, you know? If you're going to decide that's not a voice and that is, where's the cut-off point? Do you see what I mean? This is the fallacy they use. I mean, I used the example of the Sistine Chapel. I said, well, how do you know that's not just random splashes of paint? You know, what's his name? Leonardo, Michelangelo, whatever he was, went in there one day and just kicked some paint buckets around in a temple, and he liked the pattern. And they'll say, well, of course that's a painting. Can't you see it's obvious? Oh, I'm a skeptic and I know these things. And that's God and that's the hand of God and everything. And I says, well, maybe it just looks like that to you. That's your brain interpreting random patterns. See, there's no agreed cut-off point between one and the other in the skeptic movement. And I'll put some more links in the description box, okay, to give you more idea about what I'm talking about. But there's no agreed cut-off point between one and the other. They will not accept that. They will not accept it. They will not accept. They'll say coincidence whenever they meet something, they come across something they don't like, but they'll never admit something's not a coincidence. And according to their logic, they never have to, until they've actually decided, until it has been decided within the skeptic world that there is a point of statistical improbability where they will finally admit that something's not coincidence. Then they can suggest that anything physically possible can be coincidence. It is physically possible that the Sistine Chapel is not a painting and it's just random splashes of paint. So that's a problem I have with them anyway. Like I said, it carries on. Now, as I said, only one person on that thread actually discussed what I think is the principal point of this whole scandal, this whole debacle or situation, and that is, what if Michael Shermer actually ceases to become a skeptic? What if he actually comes over to our side? Again, we're talking about not just any old skeptic, we're talking about a very high profile defection here of one of the most admired and well sort of looked up to and respected members of their community, one of the most significant and principal members of their community. What will they do? That's the question. I mean, some of them will try damage limitation. They'll try ignoring him. They'll just stop talking about him. They'll just sort of like let him. He'll just be sort of like left out of conversation until perhaps he drifts away. It's a bit like throwing him down the memory hole, really. But there is, like I said, there's a thug element in the skeptic movement. I said this in my Sally Morgan video. And there's a thug element that has carried out several attacks already against Rebecca Watson, against Sally herself, against Merrill Dorey, who's an anti-vaccination campaigner in Australia, and they'll go for these people. Rebecca herself is a skeptic, but they just went for her. And the thing about the three examples I just gave was the modus operandi was identical, which makes me think the same gang is behind all three. These include death threats and really horrible death threats as well. Threats of rape, of mutilation, torture, threats to plant a bomb in their house. They were sent pictures of human corpses. I mean, you see the photos of Sally Morgan when she was coming out of court. I mean, the woman used to be quite sort of chubby, but she lost a lot of weight during that period of her life. So basically, I'm not sure if Michael Shermer really is having second thoughts about being a skeptic. Maybe I've misinterpreted what he's saying. Okay. And I'm still not exactly sure. Steve himself is questioning this as well. It's but too early to say exactly what's going to happen. The question is, though, if he really does start to Shermer does decide to become this heretic, this high profile traitor, then he's going to need a lot of courage. And we'll see yet if he has the balls to stand up to the retribution he's going to get from the people who looked up to him, the community he was a part of. Which some people are going to be angry with him. They're going to want to avenge this betrayal. And he's going to have to see if he can. I hope he can stand firm through that. I mean, he has my full support. If that is the case, I'll do everything I can to defend him and protect him. And I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and I'll give you updates if updates emerge. This could just float away. I mean, it's already been a month now, and nothing else has happened. There's been no significant developments, as far as I'm aware of. If I hear anything more, I will let you know. If Michael Shermer does decide to become a turncoat, I'll offer him an interview on my radio show, or either on Hapanwo TV, and that'll be interesting, won't it? So anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching Hapanwo TV. It remains for me to say, hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.